this title?
I do. It will mean a lot more to him because he has said that while he was winning the previous, say, 3 or 4, that he really wanted some stiff competition. You know, he's such a fierce competitor. He's raced karts since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. He just loves going out there and winning. And he wants to do it properly. And he wants to have a good competition. And he's certainly got it this year with Max Verstappen. I mean, a real red-hot charger. So Lewis Hamilton's had to work very, very hard for it. So if he wins it against that competition, it really will feel good. And then you've got the added context of, as you say, the 8th World Championship. I mean, my goodness me, nobody's ever done that before. Hamilton's attitude always has been, look, I'm not starting the season saying, I want to beat Michael Schumacher's record. I want to get him this. I take it race by race, championship by championship. And even this weekend, he's been recorded as saying that I'm not thinking about the 8th championship from the point of view of the record. I'm just trying to win the race, then the championship, and then I'll stand back and you guys in the media will probably tell me all about what's it like to win the 8th and blah, 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 blah. So that's the way he's treating it. But for sure, when he stops and gives it some thought, it will be mighty satisfying in many, many ways.
The feeling from the outside over the last few years is that Hamilton wins these world titles by being an exceptional driver, but by also having by far and away the strongest car. In terms of Verstappen being able to go level on points into the final race of the season, how much of that is to do with Red Bull closing the gap in Mercedes, and how much of it is to do with Max Verstappen's improvement as a driver?
Bit of both, actually, on that. But I'd say more the improvement by Red Bull. Red Bull, I mean, they're a fantastic team. And they've got the brilliant Adrian Newey designing their cars. And that guy's pedigree is second to none. But the problem that they've had in the past is that they never really came good until towards the end of the season, which was too late from a championship point of view. And they would always be in the running right towards the end. This time, in 2021, from the get-go at the first race in Bahrain, they were on it, absolutely on it. And they've been like that all the way through. So, in fact, you could argue, people who know more about the technicalities than I do, say that the Red Bull actually, on pace for pace, lap for lap, is probably marginally better over the season than the Mercedes. Now, added to that, you've got Verstappen, who's, you know, he came in with a bit of a fiery reputation. He still got it, but he was doing some stuff that you thought, oh, no, you know, it's you're not complete, you're making mistakes and so on. But this season, up until last weekend in Saudi Arabia, he really has been, the rough edges have disappeared. He's been very calm. He's kept it all under control. But that last weekend, and from then until now, it seems to be falling away a little bit. And it's going to be a huge test of Verstappen to keep us cool this weekend, because it's no easy thing in a championship decider.
Yeah, from what you've seen of him, do you think he'll be affected by the conversation that's been happening around him over the past week, and a lot of the criticism that he has taken, that he has pushed it too far, that he took too many unnecessary risks, and that the eyes of the world are on him this weekend, and that if he is to be a world champion either this year or into the future, he needs to conduct himself like a great world champion and basically not push Lewis Hamilton off the track? Do you think, is he the type of personality who will be thinking along those lines, or is he just going to go on that and think, whatever way this race goes, whatever I got to do, I'm going to go and do it?
Well, that's a really interesting question, Nathan, because up until last weekend, he was saying, look, I'm not thinking about the championship. I just want to win one race. I love racing, and if I win the race, great, and so on. And when we get to the end of the year, if I haven't won the championship, never mind. I'm only 24. I've got plenty of time left. It'll come. Fine. That's all right. But I can tell you, and I've seen many World Championship finales, I'm very fortunate in being able to have seen them. When you get to the final round, everything changes because the pressure is enormous. No matter how much you try to put it at the back of your mind, he will be there in Abu Dhabi. We've had all this fuss, as you say, from last weekend, all this talk, all the questions at the press conference today were all about, you know, what do you think about what you did, and what do you think about the penalties you've had, and what are you going to do on Sunday? You know, if the two of you are neck and neck, are you going to treat it like, are you going to try and edge Lewis Hamilton off the road? Questions like that. On top of that, the Dutch press are there en masse. That's what always happens. So you are the centre of attention. And the whole team then is looking at you. So you've got the Red Bull team, you've got 700 or 800 people, and you are their representative on the grid. And you're going to go for the championship for you and for them. Don't tell me that pressure doesn't count, because it does. It's massive. And it's really ramped up hugely this week because of the drama we had. So it's going to be a big, big test of Verstappen to see if he can keep his cool. If, say, he makes a bad start and Lewis Hamilton gets ahead, is he going to try and take the lead into the first corner, or will he be cool enough to think, no, hang on a minute, I've got to play the long game here? I don't know the answer to that, and that is going to be fascinating to see.
And who knows exactly how it plays out, but do you feel his reputation is at stake? Because, you talk about former clashes, and we all have been looking back on YouTube, I'm sure, over the past week at Prost Senna, and even the first crash in '89 in Suzuka, where I think Murray Walker's initial reaction is, that's fantastic. Where as we go on then the next year, and Schumacher Hill and Schumacher Villeneuve, like there's a sense that if Verstappen does the wrong thing, he will be the villain and it will tarnish his entire reputation, where it doesn't feel as though it tarnished any of those drivers' reputations. No,
you're right. I mean, it will initially, but then, you get into the next season, you win more races, and everybody kind of tends to forget it a little bit. But this weekend, yes, I think there's a lot of pressure on him, a lot of people looking at him because of his, shall we say, questionable tactics that he got penalized for in Saudi Arabia last week. And knowing that the two of them are going to go into this race, and if they both fail to finish, Max Verstappen is the world champion by dint of, as you said at the beginning of the program, he's won 9 races, Lewis Hamilton has won 8. Rather like Ayrton Senna in Suzuka, the Japanese Grand Prix, 1990, if Alain Prost didn't finish the race, Senna would be world champion, and he took them both out because he knew that he would be champion. It was a deliberate act, which should have been penalized, but that's another story. So, Verstappen knows this, and he knows if he does anything even marginal, people will jump on him from a great height, saying, oh, you're trying to take Hamilton out. So he's in a very difficult situation, because his natural instinct is to, if he sees a gap, go for it. But if he goes for it and there's a collision and Hamilton's out, the people are going to jump on him from a great height, even though he wouldn't necessarily have meant that right from the start, So it's very tricky for him, very hard.
Yeah, it could be a very interesting afternoon for Michael Massey, the FIA race director, who today sent out his race notes and made specific reference to this as well, in warning the drivers about the fact that they could deduct points. He says any infringement of the principles of fairness in competition, behaviour in an unsportsmanlike manner, or attempt to influence the result of a competition in any way contrary to sporting ethics. For all FIA championships, the stewards may also decide to impose the following penalties: suspension, withdrawal of points for the championship. So they are putting it out there that if Max Verstappen were to do this, and it were proven he had taken Lewis Hamilton out on purpose, that they could well deduct points and cost him the World Championship if either of them go out. Mentally, I guess Hamilton has done this before so many times that you would feel he's the stronger going into the final race. Did anything that happened last weekend change the balance between Verstappen and Hamilton?
Not really. I think what you saw was when they got to the first corner, say, and Verstappen runs Hamilton wide, Hamilton's avoiding the collision. He doesn't want it, and Verstappen knows that. So that will continue on Sunday, because Hamilton has got to finish. He can't let Verstappen, obviously, score more points.
And that's a really interesting point, isn't it? Because I heard Eddie Jordan was on with us on Monday night making that point as well, whereas my sense from watching was that maybe Max Verstappen was the one who was a little bit rattled, but he was pointing out that actually by the way that Verstappen is driving, his aggressive style of driving means that if they're too close together, Hamilton is the one who will be nervous.
Correct. And he tends to be a bit like that anyway. I mean, nervous is maybe not the right word, but cautious, And because he's thinking of the long game, that's where he's really got it. He's got this bandwidth in his head that he can work everything out, and he tends to drive like that. In his youth, he didn't. He was a little bit more impetuous, like Verstappen is now. But he really is thinking about the whole race from start to finish, and that's what we saw last week, and I dare say we're going to see again this week. But the point you make about the race director Michael Massey bringing those points out, I've never seen that done before.
Okay.
Where he's trying to get that on the line. But Verstappen's reaction to that, he was asked about that, and he says, well, the regulations are exactly as they were before, which is true. All Massey's doing is just highlighting some of it and saying, nothing's changed, I'm going to carry on. And that maybe gives you an indication of what we might going to see. If Verstappen's going to be rather, now to hell with it, I'm just going to go for another win. Well, I don't think he can afford to do that.
It's hard to see any scenario that doesn't end with one of Toto Wolff or Christian Horner storming down the pit lane towards the stewards at the end of this.
No, I mean, I hope we don't. That I must say, last weekend's race, I mean, it was very eventful, but God, what a mess. And it wasn't a race as we want to see because of all the nonsense going on. What we really have got to hope for is that they both go racing wheel to wheel. The two fastest guys in Formula One in the shootout, having a good old scrap, which they both would enjoy and are both capable of doing. And we don't have any recourse to the stewards and all this stuff. I mean, I have to say, I don't particularly like when we're watching TV and you hear the transmission of the race managers, the team managers whinging to Michael Massey, because of course it's done for effect so that we all hear it, and it's pathetic. I really don't want to hear any of that. And I hope that we don't see them marching off all, and then we're getting quotation. I mean, Christian Horner, some of his quotes, I think, are not what you should have from a race director, a team principal. He's just stirring things up. I mean, I know he's got to support his man, but there are times when you should take a more moderated approach, I think, from the point of view of the effect this is having on the... Right. I mean, as a journalist, you love it, don't you? It's great.
Exactly.
But it's not good. But I just hope we don't get any of that. I just want to see a really good race. That's what everybody wants to see.
Call it then, Maurice.
It's all right. Let's assume they're both in the front row of the grid. That would be fantastic. Okay, let's assume they're both in the front row of the grid. You just don't know, because it depends on who does their homework right, on who's got their tires working right. Depends on everything that goes on the next day and a half, the next day and a half of free practice. It's so hard to call because they're both capable of doing it. No question about that. I think I would come back to what I said originally, that if push comes to shove, I hope not literally, but if push comes to shove, Lewis Hamilton's experience of being in this high-pressure cauldron before will count. All
right, Maurice, great stuff. Enjoy the weekend.
Pleasure, Nation. Thank you very much.
And we have lots more coming ahead of Sunday. A special Saturday panel with John Duggan on Saturday from 1 o'clock. They will have Times Racing correspondent Rebecca Clancy, former driver David Kennedy, and Formula One commentator John Watson on this week's Saturday panel. We cannot wait. Quick break.
Off the ball on News Talk. News Talk Breakfast.
On Thursday, we spoke to Dr. John Sheehan about why Ireland should follow New Zealand's approach and outlaw smoking.
None of us want our children to take up smoking, so I think this is a